Hello, and welcome to a really cool episode of AI Amplified, boosting IQs with AI for you. My name is Shannon Murphy. I'm with the AI Center of Empowerment, and with me is my co-host, Mike Fitzurka, AI Technical Specialist. And we are so happy to welcome back Thad Vorozilchak, VP of Ecosystem of IBM and Managing Director, TD SYNNEX. Hi, Thad. Thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Mike and Shannon, for having me back.
Perfect. In our last episode, we touched briefly on different model sizes and different use cases for models. So I wanted to kind of follow up again with that on this episode. There's models out there that are 1 billion, 3 billion, then they give 70 billion, and larger with the omniscient models. And, maybe as an American, I think, if 7's good, then 70 must be 10 times better. That's got to be the right thing, right? More is better. But you've open sourced the models at the smaller end, the 1, 3, and 7 billion or 8 billion parameters. So I'm glad to have you back. We can discuss maybe why those. What's the advantage to the smaller language models, which you hear a lot in the news about the larger language models, but what's really going on with the smaller ones? What's the trade-offs to consider when you're looking at it for business use cases and development?
Yeah, great segue into the way that we're approaching models at IBM. And I think, the last time we talked about open models and the importance for open and trust and transparency, there's some real factors that we can gain around efficiency and cost savings when you start to think about size. So those two kind of go hand in hand. So it's great to be back on this topic. Look, if open is the table stakes for innovation, then size is going to be what matters for scale. So you said traditionally we think of more is better. And I grew up thinking that as well, like more is better. And I'll say this, neither you nor I, Mike, have to stray away from that thought here. The difference is, what do you want more of? Do you want more flexibility? Do you want more of your budget in your pocket? Do you want more of the ability to scale? If the answer is more is better for those things, then you're really going to want to consider your model size. Last time we talked about using the right tool for the job and referencing using kitchen knives, using knives in the kitchen. Each have their purpose for different knives. You don't butter your bread with a chef's knife. You don't fillet a fish with your butcher knife or steak knife. Each has its own purpose. And I would say that that's what we're really considering when we look at models in the enterprise. So model size. You want the performance, first of all. Let's put size to the side. You want performance, right? More is better when it comes to performance. What we're finding is that frontier models and large proprietary models don't necessarily perform any better. In fact, in some of the studies that we've been a part of and that we've conducted ourselves, our 8 billion parameter Granite models for things like text or agentic workflows, et cetera, work even better than large monolithic models. So there's that to consider. Then you consider the cost. Regardless of the performance, you want as low of a cost to generate that performance as possible. We're seeing benefits from smaller models. Again, I'll use the Granite 8B. Granite 8B can produce text answers. So the most common LLM use case, let's think RAG and just response to chat, at up to a 96% cost savings when compared to the most popular models out there. I'll leave those names to protect the innocent, but these are published studies that are open for others to see. 96% savings is really something, right? Because we know as enterprises, it's not the same as you and I going out to Perplexity or on our OpenAI subscription and with ChatGPT and spending $20 a month. That cost is fixed. the price per query is based upon how many times we're querying it per day. It's not the same for our enterprise use cases where we want it to scale. We want the AI to be used. We want that more. We just want it at a lower cost, and we want it to retain that performance without that monolithic model. When you think of model size, that's what you should be thinking of. How much can I get from my model for my specific use case, um, with the best price to performance ratio and the lowest compute size possible, which often lends to that price to performance.
Yeah, and I think those smaller models, especially when you're in a business use case, are easier to train because if you've got a larger model that you're going to have to, if you want it to represent your corporate data and your what you want it to do for your process. Training a larger model is a gargantuan effort. It scales with the size of the model, and when it's an 8,000 billion parameter model, it doesn't take. It's still, you can still fine tune it. It just doesn't cost as much to do the training as well.
Yeah, I mean, back to our open conversation, right? With tools like we've released from IBM, Instruct Lab, and our B framework, you can with these smaller models, you can run these models. You can begin to train your model. You can create your workflows on something as low cost as a desktop. That's not possible elsewhere. Not just because of the place that it runs, in this case on premises on a desktop, but because of the size of that model. That starts to play an impact there. And as we think about the next frontier, which is really how do we create agentic workflows using multi-model, multimodal LLMs that are built for purpose, you really want to have that smaller model that's specific to the task, that gives you that price to performance ratio that you need to scale it, because it's going to be working hand in hand with potentially two, three, four other models, and it's going to be calling on data from throughout your organization, which has a cost associated. So the more you can keep that model cost down, and primarily by size, the better off you are. I think you touched on something else, though, Mike, that's really important, probably a whole other topic, which is how do you incorporate your business data into the model data that it was trained on? That in and of itself is another area and approach where we at IBM have really looked into how do you do that without creating a fork, or B, doing the expensive notion of fine tuning as it's traditionally done to retrain a model itself. Certainly, as we've looked at small and we've looked at open, we've looked at that as well, and that is going to be part of this next frontier as well, because only 1% of business data is being used today in the business context with AI models, and we need that to be the 99% in order to get value at a corporate level, at an individual firm level, to be a competitive differentiator. So small open models with your data, you do that, I think you're in the sweet spot.
And exactly, and you get a bunch of them together, automate your entire process. Kick back and watch.
A kid can dream, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think the key word is opportunity. Just listening, to what you're saying and what we're doing now and what we could be doing, the opportunity is there. It's just such a very exciting time.
Shannon, you're totally right. I think everything that we've talked about, whether it be the trust and transparency on in our last meeting, or the size and cost of the model, or the ability to be flexible with your model so that it incorporates your own IP and data. Those are three things that today are barriers, but you're looking at it the right way, in my opinion, which are they're also opportunities because the tools exist, the models exist today. It's about finding the right use cases with the proper ROI, not forgetting that these are primarily for business, and having that good business case and then mapping some of these principles back to it. I think when you do that, that opportunity shows itself in a big way, and we're going to see a lot of it in 2025.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
That's why we have a technical and business hosts for the AI Amplified. So Again, unfortunate. I think we have to end things today. But I definitely want to thank you again, Thad, for joining us and giving us your insights here. It's been very incredible, very insightful, and very glad that you joined us. And of course, I also want to thank our audience, as always, for your time and attention. And we will see you next time on AI Amplified, boosting IQs with AI for you.